Hi, I'm Dr. D. Ivan Young. I am a master certified coach, and it's my pleasure to spend this moment with you today. We're going to talk about the subject of accurate empathy, and this subject is transformational in that it will help attach to some of our core competencies. And here are a few that we're going to address. One, this will help to embody a coaching mindset. Also, it will help you cultivate the trust and safety that is needed for effective coaching with your clients. It will also empower you to maintain your coaching presence while listening actively. And the bigger parts of this is that it will evoke awareness in your clients while helping to facilitate their growth. Transformational coaching begins and ends with how effectively that you can connect with your client. And today, specifically, I'm going to be talking about using accurate empathy, not just empathy, but accurate empathy to do this. If your goal as a coach is to increase your client's self efficacy, to help increase their capacity, mastery of empathetic coaching is going to be a necessary tool for you in doing this. And one of the things is that masterful coaching is not mechanistic. It is something that should be synergistic. It should be fluid. There needs to be a rapport, almost like a dance and a movement back and forth between you and your client. To raise your bar as a coach, you've got to connect with your client in meaningful and measurable ways. Now, not understanding the difference between accurate empathy is basically not understanding the difference between having a facade of emotional intelligence or concern versus the authentic and real thing. And we know, based on what we've seen in media, television, we see it all the time. People fake empathy, they fake connecting with their clients. And when you do that, at best, you're going to not only marginalize your business as a coach as well as your revenue, but you are going to significantly impair and compromise the ability for you to have a meaningful, a relationship-based engagement with your client that will help you to take this session that you're in or this period of time for your coaching agreement from what would be just basic and cookie cutter to being something that is going to be quite meaningful and robust. Now, I understand that for you to have the growth that you're looking for, that's not going to happen unless you position yourself for your client to fully resonate with you on many levels. To do that, the first step in being able to have accurate empathy is to understand, okay, how am I coming to the table? In other words, what is going on with you? And this starts by looking at some key factors. Number one, what's your age? Why does that matter? Real simple. If you are a baby boomer like me, you probably memorized phone numbers. You had to use a dial phone. You were probably the remote control to the TV when you were a kid. Well, that has a great deal to do with how you see life, how you communicate. It has everything to do with the filter in which you look at life. So if you're a Gen X is a good example, and I say something to you like, why don't we run and go grab a burger? What I'm thinking about and my view of that had nothing to do with getting a vegan patty. I want a nice greasy hamburger. Well, you just imagine if we start having these disconnects, what happens when that applies to empathy? What happens when we throw in the other factors, like what is your culture? What is your race? What's your socioeconomic strata? How do you manage conflict? What is your personality type? And all of those things have something to do with you understanding how you come to the table. Years ago, they had a device called a GPS that you would buy. It wasn't Zoom or Google Maps. And when that GPS operated, it basically triangulated three things: altitude, latitude, and longitude. But before you could even use the doggone thing, you had to put in, where are you? And that's why I was saying the stuff about your history. Before you can empathize with someone else, you have to understand, where am I starting? And more than that, as a coach, it is very important for you to have a target in mind, which would be the end destination in this GPS example. That end destination is setting up the framework for your coaching engagement, whether it is a one-time engagement, whether you're working with a group, or whether you're working with a series of coaching sessions with one client. Now, here was the problem with that original GPS. Once you put in your location, once you put in your destination, it could only function according to what was the most current version of maps that had been uploaded to the GPS. Well, many people found themselves quite frustrated when they were going down the street and the GPS said turn left, and they were like, there is no left turn, or the GPS said exit here. Well, there is no exit. And see, that is the problem when we do demonstrations of empathy with people. We are using, in many instances, like that old GPS. We know where we're starting from, we know where we want to end up. The problem is we're using outdated maps. Some of the ways that we view information, the ways that we interact with our clients, even with our thoughts about our clients, it causes a disconnect. And see, that disconnect is something that can prove to be a place of sabotage, and it can set you back in so many ways in terms of being able to effectively attain the outcomes that you want in a coaching session. So today, my hope for you is this. One, I want you to take into consideration how important it is that you unpack your baggage before you meet with your clients, before you even begin to connect with them, because people can tell when you're not there, when you're not present. Being mindfully present is a critical element in effective coaching, and it sure is a critical element in accurate empathy. When we take the first step into a conversation with the client, we have to set and test what is the temperature in the room. In other words, how could we effectively engage in this relationship with someone, especially in the first or second session with a client, when we just rush in, we have this cookie cutter template in mind, and we think that, you know what, my coaching skills are so robust. I'm an MCC, I'm a PCC, I've got this. Well, I want to tell you, no, you don't. One of the worst things that coaches do, and especially those of you that are ACC coaches or even considering getting into coaching, or you use coaching as a skill, not as a profession. So this is going to be very important for you to understand that the most critical time in a coaching session is not the session, it's not the generative moment, it's the 2 to 3 minutes before that session begins, where you center yourself, you ground yourself, you take that time to be mindfully and intentionally present, to get rid of your junk. Think about whatever it is that could be going on in your life in this moment that could be a distraction. And especially if you're a parent, if you are in a relationship, you have a significant other, you just finished with a client, you just left one meeting, now you're going into another meeting, or you're just not feeling well. Heck, it could be something physiological that's going on with you. Get all of that stuff up, out on the table before the session ever begins. Whatever you have to do to grasp and seize control of not only your mental space, but the environment that's going on in your head, do so. And that's those first 3 minutes. Now, for that to happen, we have to honor and accept the fact that accurate empathy is not a skill. It's not just a tool. It's both. It's a way of being. It's a frame of mind. It is the thing where you displace, get rid of, arrest your instincts that previously probably got you to a certain place. It may have been a good thing if you could use your gift of articulation, your academic background, your training as a physician. But see, accurate empathy is really about you being authentically you. It's about you being able to be so present, so mindfully aware of what's going on with yourself that you can control that and make yourself an open vessel for the person that you're meeting with. And when you do that, we have to consider, what is misguided empathy? Well, often misguided empathy shows up like sympathy. It shows up like enabling. It shows up in ways that are very unhealthy for the coach and the client. When we go into our coaching relationship with our clients and we tend to be so focused on solving their problem, that again is you relying on your expertise rather than your presence. And accurate empathy is about your presence. It's about taking the time to assertively listen, not wait to talk. It's about paying attention to somatic movements with your client. How are they sitting? Are you noticing that they're looking around the room, that they're looking at a watch? Did they come in rushed because of bad traffic? They just, like you, both of you guys just left two meetings. Well, whether this is in the C-suite or in your office, this matters because we cannot take control of the coaching session and guide it. And I don't mean control the session as in control your client. What I mean is by controlling the ambience in the room, controlling the distractions and making sure that they're not present. And when we do these things, what our clients appreciate is, the first thing is that you are fully there for them. It's not about you. It's not you being disconnected, thinking about, well, what am I going to eat? Looking at them in some way because you don't like what they have on, or maybe this is uncomfortable for you. You're working with a client who is a different race, or they may have an alternative lifestyle that is not the same lifestyle that you embrace. Well, being truthful with you in these first couple of minutes, and I'm talking about now, not the couple of minutes before the session, but when you and your client first sit down, exchange greetings, that's the time when you check in and you just ask the simple question, how are you? What's going on with you today? How are you feeling? You're not going to respond. You're going to listen. I know the inclination is to just say something, to fill the empty space. Well, one of the greatest tools about managing a coaching session and not having it end up misguided is to be just patient with the experience and with the relationship and with the connection with you and your client. And this is the time where if your client says, well, I had a long night. Okay, well, tell me about that. Do you want to talk about it? Again, what are you doing? You're giving back control to your client. Coaching presence is being established. And again, all of these competencies are there not for you to check a box. Master level coaching is not about box checking, and surely master level coaching using accurate empathy is not about box checking. It's about creating a safe space. Again, another ICF competency for your client, holding them in high unconditional regard. And you do that by just simply treating them like what matters to them matters to you. And again, you establish this in these first couple of moments. You establish this by taking the time to acknowledge body language. Well, here's an example. I see that you look a little unrelaxed right now. Is this a good time for us to take a breath? And again, ask, don't tell, don't direct, but ask. And it's okay to state your observations. It doesn't mean that you're defining what your client is. You could just say, from over here, you look like you just ran from another meeting to another. Can I get you some coffee? Would you like some water? Or would you like to begin right now? And see, these are things that people value. Most of your clients have seldom, if at all, in the last day, maybe the last weekend, for some people, most of their lives, they have not had a person give them that level of attention. They have not had a person who cared enough to pay attention to how they presented themselves, how they look, the pitch, the tone, the inflection in their voice. And see, once you do that, then you can start exploring course corrections that need to take place before you really get into the session with your client. Now, you say, Dr. Young, why is that important? Real simple. Most people work very hard for their money. You work hard for yours. Most people, they don't have a lot of time. Time is a luxury. And coming back from this environment where for the last year and a half, many of us have been on lockdown, a lot of your clients are coming back in, and this is a new job. Heck, the job they had, they lost. A lot of your clients, they suffer losses in family members or in relationships. For you to be the person to value them enough to say, are you good? Okay, now let's begin. Here's the second part of this that's very important. While we're correcting these courses and we undertake this conversation, now we become intentional about our use of skills like listening, engagement, body language, and these mirror neurons that are just indigenous to the human brain. They're playing a significant role right now. And then the motor sensory neurons, the things that cause a person to have visceral responses are basically guiding posts, guiding lights for you. They're milestones of a sort for you to use in your coaching session. Here's what I mean by this. If you see that your client is taking the time to articulate something and they're searching for words, being empathetic doesn't mean that you finish the sentences. It means that you listen. And if they give you a description that you as the coach don't feel represents what your client is displaying on their face or in their body language, it's okay to say, I just noticed something. You said something that in many instances is near and dear to the heart for a lot of people. You just said something that is showing that you have a look of concern from my observation on your face. Would you further describe what you're experiencing right now? See, that is accurate empathy. You're tapping into what the client may not even be aware of themselves. You're helping them to understand that the subject at hand, the situation, the circumstances, the thing that they are struggling with is offering much more in terms of information, revelation, awareness, and consciousness than they're even aware of. And see, by you being curious and being mindfully present as a coach, you are transforming this session right in the present moment into something that the client walked in your room, into your office, or maybe even in a group, if you're coaching a group, that they didn't think was going to actually have any value, wasn't going to impact them in the way that you are, through your own curiosity, through your own appreciation of your client, and you holding them in high esteem and the issue that's concerning them, you taking it as serious as they're taking it. Now we're getting into transformational coaching again by using accurately placed, deliberate, and intentional empathy. When you take a moment and you point out your observations, when you say to your client, hey, what you just said, I noticed the shift in your voice. What was that about? Typically when your client says something and the pitch goes up, they're making a point. And when the pitch goes down, they're still thinking, I'm tired of this. So you do the opposite. Take a moment and say, what is it you're tired of? And deliberately shift the back end of your voice to have an affirming, and in some ways you could use the word even affectionate, but a very curious, soft ending question. I notice your pitch really went up, and match your client's mood, match their tone. Again, mirror to the, not to a patronizing extent, but to the extent that you're demonstrating that you are fully engaged with them. And say, that's fascinating. I'm really amazed by how you're sharing this right now. And I just noticed while you were talking, my observation was that you clenched your fist. What is it that you're squeezing? What is it that you're resisting right now? It looks like you're resisting something. What's that about? You see, your presence and pivoting when the client is going head first into the wall. And there are times now that your client will go down the rabbit hole. Your job and using accurate empathy is to not go with them. You shine the flashlight, you shine the light. What's down the rabbit hole? What do you see down there? I can tell that this is really taking you over. Tell me, where are you? What's going on? Stay there a minute. One of the most effective tools that we use as coaches at the master level of coaching is silence. Get comfortable. Allow your client to fill the space. When I began my coaching career 15 years ago, I prided myself on being insightful and instinctive about the things that were going on. But what I didn't understand was the session wasn't about me. And this is one of the things that I want you to grasp while we spend these few minutes together today. This session is really not about you. It is very important that now, as a coach, you start connecting yourself with different methodologies that allow you to be in sync with your client by understanding these visceral processes that are going on within the coaching session. And to do that, you must make yourself available by being mindfully present. So another tool in accurate empathy is being mindful and being mindful to the extent that you are now an observer of all things in this coaching session. There are cues that every client gives you as we begin the exploration of framing this coaching agreement. I said earlier, when you walk in, you simply want to just take control of the room and make sure there are no distractions. You want to make sure that your client knows that you are there with them, that you're aware of what they came in there with, whether they came in there elated or they came in there suffocated. It is the first step in getting your client to even be aware. And like the GPS example I gave, what is the starting point today? By you empathizing with your client's circumstance and what is going on in their lives right in this present moment, now we can start talking about this coaching agreement. We can start saying, okay, well, I see that we had to kind of repivot and just get ourselves ready for this meeting today. Do you feel like we're ready to start talking? The client says, well, yeah, thank you for helping me to just kind of like calm down. I am ready to start talking. Okay, it's good. What is it that has your attention in this moment? What is it that we need to pay attention to for you today? And see, that question, it's not just a rhetorical question. It's not just another box checked. It's another place to check in. It's an opportunity for you as a masterful coach to pay attention, because often what you're going to learn is what your clients thinks that they came to talk to you about, and what's really actionable is two totally different things. But your job is to make them aware of what they're not aware of. Your job is to take this presence and start paying attention to these emotional and physical cues that your client offers you. And the next phase of this is, while you're listening to your client, there is a tendency for most coaches, and maybe it's just me, but I'm sure it could happen to you, to be distracted. There are times when we are triggered by something that the client is dealing with. Your mother could have just succumbed to illness, or God forbid, you lost a loved one or a good friend or even a pet. And now your client brings that up in the subject matter, and you find yourself overly integrating into the conversation. And see, that's when, again, we have some misguided empathy, and we need to go back and reflect and just, pay attention. And a lot of this can be done by using techniques like reflections, and by reflecting and saying, what I just heard you say is this. Well, the act of doing that automatically pulls you out of your head and into your client's space. It pulls you into the thing that matters most to them. But if you sit there and you become inebriated by their story, drunk within their context, so to speak, it is kind of like you started now going from being an effective witness to watching a movie unfold before you, and you're a voyeur rather than someone that is a partner, that is a tool that your client is using in order to affect awareness. Now, as we go past this and the client starts narrowing down what it is that is going to be the focus for your session, this is the time to start unearthing what is meaningful about this, so that you and your client can best determine what their desired outcome is from this. When I was maybe getting my PCC, and some of you guys are doing that right now, you're looking at this so you can have some hours toward that PCC. That's the place where coaching and passion begin to align itself. First, many of us get into coaching because we just want to help somebody. We really think that we have something to offer. And believe me, you do have something to offer. So, you're not looking at this by happenstance. You're supposed to be here right now. And my hope is that this is going to be meaningful for you. And that PCC level of coaching, you start learning that there is a ebb and flow. There's a continuity where you get this coaching agreement, and you establish and measures for what a successful outcome of that will look like. And then you get into this exploration, right? Now, while we're doing that, what we don't want to do is become mechanistic and start checking boxes. One of the opportunities that you're going to have for those of you who are MCC coaches, and I'm warning you, you will fail miserably if you are mechanistic and just going through a box check coaching thing. No matter how articulate and well-educated and well-dressed you are, if you're not effective as a coach, you're going to blow it, right? And you can cover all the bases and still blow it. So I'm warning you, you aspiring MCCs or you MCCs that have had your credentials for a minute and gotten comfortable. This is the time that empathy really becomes more critical in the engagement. We start looking for core values, and what we're really wanting to tap into, and I want you to look up these terms: appreciative inquiry and motivational interviewing. We really want to understand a few things after we've defined what this session is about. Number one, what is the motivation behind this exploration? What made this subject matter, this situation, this focus? What makes it important? Why now? Why is your client bringing this up? Not today, not at this point in the year, but why is this center stage in this moment of their life? Because as a coach, your job is not to be so connected to your client's past or to their future. You're connected to the moment. In other words, if you start coaching the problem and you're not coaching the client, you're not coaching. Accurate empathy is one of the biggest ways, deliberate, intentional focus, that we make a coaching session meaningful and robust by looking at and deeply exploring the whys. Now, I'm not going to tell you, and especially if you're new to coaches, I'm not going to say a why question is a bad question. I'm going to say don't use it, because typically why causes someone to justify themselves. Well, why'd you do that? That's not what we're looking for. What we're looking for is the meaning behind this. What makes this meaningful? What is it about this moment? And the answers to those questions are often right in front of you based on what your client did not say. It's there in a facial expression. It's there in something that is not answered, a question that is not answered. It's there when they shift and go to another subject. And it's okay, especially UMCC candidates, for you to say, I asked a question a moment ago. What's the reason for not answering it? You don't have to accuse them of avoiding it. You're observing. What's your reason? You can ask, I notice the difference in the pitch and tone and inflection in your voice. How does this connect to the bigger picture? And see, this is where you start going from the middle of this conversation into a generative moment. Now, the generative moment, again, I want you to look that up, because a lot of the terms I'm using, I don't use cue cards because I think they're distracting. And this forces you to write it down and listen to me and not go and try to screenshot a cue card. I really want you to work. So today, when you look at this generative moment, this opportunity where your client, now you are in the middle of this conversation, you've identified what your client wants to focus on today, and you're exploring why it matters, what makes this important right now. And you're not at the solution phase, because often, and this is for you PCC coaches, it's not always about solving a problem. A mistake that many coaches make in a mechanistic mindset is that they want to solve a problem for a client, when in fact the client didn't ask you to solve a problem. Guys, yes, guys, I'm talking to you men out there, or people that have a lot of masculine energy in relationships. People don't want you to fix it. Sometimes your clients really just want to talk about it and they want to get it off their chest. And this takes a new venue for you as a coach, especially you PCC coaches, because you've been focused on focus, meaning, and outcome. And maybe the outcome is more exploration. Maybe the outcome is a deeper meaning. Maybe, perhaps the outcome is self-reflection, introspection, which does not say we're going to walk away from this today and go do X, Y, Z and come back next week and see how that works for us. See, the difference between coaching and psychoanalysis and the things you see in many helping professions is we're not problem solvers. Problems solve themselves. We are the people that help the client to understand and develop self-efficacy. And self-efficacy is the tool, it's the source material for a transformational coaching session, because now you as the coach have tapped into appreciating your client in such a way that your client can start coming to life. They walked in the room and they were distracted by the traffic. They were distracted because of what was on their mind. But see, you as a coach, because you practice accurate empathy, you were deliberate, you were present, you tapped into your client's momentum that they did not even know that they had. They were down in the rabbit hole. They were in the abyss. But see, you as a coach, by asking powerful questions, you just transformed this by actively listening. You remember when we were talking earlier, and I made the comment and I said that some of the coaching things about evoking awareness, all of these core competencies that you have to demonstrate in order to get this PCC, or maybe even your ACC, but it's certainly at the MCC and PCC level. This comes by you being part of this big generative moment. Momentum is everything. Being able now, as your client is exploring motivation, and by you reaffirming and maintaining your presence. And a lot of people confuse this. They think, well, what is coaching presence? I'm sitting in my chair, right? I look like a coach. No, that's not coaching presence. See, coaching presence, and I'm going to give you my description. If this is on a test, you don't use this for a test, okay? This is just Dr. Young's description. My description for coaching presence is it stays with the client when you're not present. There's a little part of, and it's not you, by the way. It is you reflecting them back to them, and you're just an organic mirror. So as this presence is there, your client remembers the excitement that was generated by you recognizing what was meaningful in this generative moment, in this place where exploration was there, and they were learning to think about the last time they saw something that looked like this. Or they're at the place where in the trans-theoretical model for change, there's pre-contemplation, contemplation, preparation, and action and motivation, or an acceptance and commitment therapy, where the client is now saying, yes, this is a pain in the butt, but maybe it's good that I've been afflicted. Maybe this struggle is bringing out something in me that I didn't know what was there. Maybe if you're using cognitive behavioral therapy as your modality, this is where they shift the relationship with languaging this, and you're using your neurolinguistics, or maybe, just maybe, you're not doing any of those things, or a combination of all of those things, and you realize that as their coach, that the next step, the action step, and this is in PCC coaching, where we start with the powerful question and connecting it to, okay, well, and here's a PCC. I know you guys that are in your training courses now are going, yeah, I remember this from the book. When they ask you something like, okay, well, so what tools are you going to use? What resources are at your disposal? I don't want you to make that some generic question. I want you to empathize. I want you to get in there with your client and really think about, okay, what tools? Don't make it, what tools could you use? Like it's just something you're saying because you're in a Shakespearean play and it makes sense. What tools could you use? But I really want you to think about, you're talking to this inner city kid, and you have to relate to the fact that, maybe he's going home or she's going home to a dysfunctional environment, or maybe your client just came out and they're just now accepting their identity, and for the first time they can be who they have been hiding from because they didn't feel other people would understand. Or maybe for the first time, this person has to face themselves and realize that, oh God, I'm the source of my problem. And you say, well, you know what tools can you use? You see where I'm going with this? In other words, when we get to the part of coaching that looks like we're moving toward a solution, we're moving more toward awareness of why that solution is meaningful. It's all about the meaning. You're going to hear me say it again and again. Don't coach the problem, coach the person. You're going to hear me say it again and again. Empathy is the transformational foundation. Accurate empathy is the foundation of transformation. And as we do this, we need to understand that using empathy properly is something that we want internally and externally. Now, I'm going to get out the coaching session for a minute and go back to where we started. The best place to practice this is with you. I'm going to ask you right now, where are some places in your life where you're not empathizing with yourself enough? You know, at the beginning, I said, in order to accurately empathize with someone else, it is critical that you understand your starting points, you know, your age, your race, your gender, your cultural origins, your customs, how society has affected your view of yourself. I just said affected it, laughed. That's funny. That's my joke. No, anyway. But the point I'm making is this. Where can you stop laughing at yourself and really start giving yourself what you give everybody else? The other part of this is think about your client prior to the meeting. Do your homework, especially on a new client. And I'm not saying do your homework so that you can come in biased, prejudiced, and making assumptions that you know who this person is based on some group that you put them into. That is not part of being accurate in empathy. If anything, that's a distraction. What I'm saying is allow your curiosity, allow yourself to be curious in such a way that you anticipate ways that you can be supportive and permeable, that you can connect, that you can resonate with your client. And see, how can you do for someone else what you don't do for yourself? How can you be transformational in someone else's life if you're not transformational with regard to your own life? How can you bring into submission your wild and illusory thoughts, the things that have you thinking more about where you're going to go eat lunch than what it is that you need to learn with your client? You see, accurate empathy is the epitome of being a coach who's focused on creating trust and safety for their client. You know, when we read the competencies that ICF created, we read them and we check boxes, and I'm asking you today, I'm offering to you today in this session that you do more than that. You know, when I mentor coach people, and most of the coaches that come to me are master level coaches and PCC level coaches who've been around a minute. The things that I have found transformational for them is to go back and approach coaching from a perspective of humanity. Your own humanity is going to be the strongest tool that you will use as a coach. Sure, there are lots of techniques that we can learn by training programs and role plays. But the things that are transformational to your clients, they may come from the fruit of these techniques, but they're not going to come because of the technique. And what I mean by that is simply this. It is the spirit of coaching that is transformational. You know, the phrase actively listening. I'm going to tell you, sure, that, you know, that's what the ICF phrase is, but I want you to hear this and just walk away with this in closing. You cannot give to someone else something that you would not find useful for yourself. And if there's anything I want to leave you with today, is that empathy is one thing, but to use empathy in an accurate way is another. And as a coach, your job is to not just coach your client, but to empower your client to be their own coach when you're not present. You're so much more capable than you think. And I want to wish you luck with your PCC exam, your MCC exam. And if this is just continuing ed for you, thank you for helping make ICF what it is and bringing to coaching what you bring. And the best thing of all of that is going to be you. I'm Dr. D. Ivan Young, that's spelled like Ivan, and it's been a blast. I hope this was helpful. Bye now. Have a great day.